Hello, good evening, everyone. Let's see, I just wanted to make everyone aware of a few details about the building. If there were to be an emergency, we've got our exits clearly marked here at the door you came in, and there's a door actually behind everyone. But I do want to let people know that there is an entrance off of MLK Boulevard, which I would imagine most people came through. And if you were to go down this hallway and turn to the left, there's another exit out, which is Ambridge's back door. So restrooms are just immediately down the hall as you exit this room right here. And I think that's it. I don't know if Brad Taylor is here yet. I don't think he is. He is our mental health specialist, and I don't know if he'll be here tonight. So if he is here to support people here at this meeting, just so you know. But that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mandy. Mm-hmm. We have on your agenda, you'll see something that says approve the minutes. Well, we don't have minutes yet. We are trying to change the system by which we take and keep our minutes and to minimize the work that we have to do in doing that. We will get them to you. We're looking at using the video that is done of our meetings and extracting language from the, I don't know what you call it, the runner under the bottom, to use that to create the minutes. Okay, so that's all in process right now. Also, we wanted to take a minute to appreciate Calais and Ted, who have been supportive and were kind enough to bring to every subcommittee meeting right before Christmas little goodies for all of us. Pieces of chocolate. Calais, why are you looking like that? And I think Mandy has something that she wants to give them, just a little card that says, thank you from the COAB for your attention and your ongoing support. So, thank you. Quick look at the agenda. Presentation from DMH Research. This is going to be a presentation on the community survey that was done regarding the Portland Police Department. And after this presentation, the COAB will have a chance to discuss the presentation. And after we have a break, we'll get public comment. Okay? The subcommittees will make reports. I hope that people were aware of that on the agenda. The chairs for the subcommittees will make reports on the work over the past few meetings, because we haven't had subcommittee reports. They've all been squeezed away because of other issues that seemed more immediate. Then the chair for the executive committee will present a reporting and a communication process for consideration here and discussion. If there's still time on the agenda, we will hear from the use of force subcommittee to further review recommendations that haven't been taken up by the COAB. If we don't get through those, and there are a lot of them, I don't think we will continue on at our next meeting. I want to start out by saying that, I'm sorry, do we have V on the phone?
She is, yes.
Okay.
She's watching the live stream and will email in any votes.
Okay, so if you heard that, V is watching the live stream and will email her votes in. And there are several people who are absent tonight with excused absences. Senator Gordley, Captain Elmore, Jakari Jackson, and Rabbi Kahana. Let me give you a brief update on our two-day retreat. 2 days held a week apart. We were a closed retreat for 2 days, the purpose of which was to get to know each other better. And the intent here is to do a summary of those days and post them and send them out to COAB members and other interested people so that you can take a look at what we did. You will not get the details of what individuals said, but you will get an idea of what went on during the retreat. Okay. So let's start off with the survey report. Oh, yeah. In addition, Senator Gordley emailed me and asked me to read the following, along with the presentation of the report from DHM. She writes, I will not be able to participate in the COAB meeting this evening. Have a positive and productive session. Please thank DHM for their report, particularly a more rigorous approach to the survey to obtain more diverse public opinions. Their approach affirms the importance of the decision we made in changing vendors to do this work. Hopefully, this is also an opportunity for the PSU vendor to be enlightened about how to more thoroughly solicit knowledge and information that serves all of the people in our city, and how to recognize and avoid bias and assumptions in survey design. And she asked that I include this statement so that it will be a part of the minutes. Thank you. Peace, love, light, and blessings, Abel. Okay. With that, I'm going to introduce John Horvick, Vice President of DHM Research, and he's going to give you a report on the survey, which, if you remember, the community engagement team put together the recommendation and sort of put this through the COAB and selected DMH to do the survey. And now we have the results of it, after which we can talk about it and ask you questions. Okay, go ahead.
Well, thank you very much. It's a pleasure and honor to be here and to have worked on this project. I want to just begin by thanking everybody up here for your service and everybody out from the community for being here too, for your interest in this work. I'm going to use my time primarily to talk about the study design, how it was done, looking at the report and how to read the results. I'm going to spend very little time talking about the results themselves. So just, the reason for that is that's really your expertise and your role. Now, as a public opinion researcher, I'm often called in to do community surveys similar to what we did today. And sometimes the hat that I wear when I do that is to bring in my expertise about a community, about policy, about strategy, and take the numbers and try to make recommendations. Sometimes that's the hat that I roll, and that's what my job is. For this project, you're the experts. And what my role was really to do and to help you understand was to conduct a thorough and rigorous study, to hear from the community, and share with you what the community had to say, and then hand it off and let you and use your judgment and wisdom to really incorporate it into your own thinking about the next steps to take. So my job today and what my goal is to really make sure you understand what we did and how to interpret the report, and then hand it off to you to think about what it means. Now, there is a lot of results we talk about. There's an executive summary that goes over some of the highlights as we saw them. But I just want to make sure before I leave today that everybody's comfortable with what we did and how to interpret things. So there were reports out front, and I hope everybody has one, because I'm going to walk through some of the key aspects of the report that I want to make sure that you all understand. First, and importantly, this survey was put together in collaboration with DHM, with my firm, but also, of course, with the COAB and the COCO. And so this is a collaborative effort in what questions were asked, how they were asked, and its design. How we reached out to people, how we reached out to the community was also a collaborative effort in terms of the getting feedback from the COAB, from the consultant team, from DHM, looking at past work. And so the study design, and I appreciate Senator Gordley's comments, but it's really, I'd like to think that DHM had an important role in that, but of course there were lots of people who weighed in to make sure that we were reaching out to a broad segment of the community. This project was a mail survey. That is, we mailed surveys to residences across the city. Now, this is political season, so you turn on the TV or radio or open a newspaper, you'll hear about a poll that's being done, often about a presidential candidate. Almost all polling nowadays, also survey work of this type, is done over the telephone. And that has a lot of advantages. It has some disadvantages too. Part of the reason that most survey work that you hear about in the news is done over the telephone is because they're only contacting registered voters. And so they're very selective about who they talk to, and they pull a list. And then part of it is cost and convenience. But it's not about trying to hear from the broadest representation or broadest group of people possible. By surveying residences, by surveying households, we could do our best to make sure that we got the survey across the community as broadly as possible. So that was one of the goals of doing it this way. Another was because this type of work has been done this way previously in the community, and we wanted to have some consistency as well. So what we did is we took a random sample of residential addresses in the city of Portland. So every residential address in the city of Portland had an equal opportunity of being selected with a couple caveats. The caveats are, we wanted to do our best, to have our best effort, to hear from, in particular, African American and Hispanic and Latino households. Now, one of the really difficult things is there's not a list out there of African American and Hispanic Latino households. And so when we looked at it, when we got the list of residences, there's some things we tried to do to target communities, whether it's anything from surname to looking at census districts and identifying census districts that have a higher percentage of African American and Latino households in them. Doing that, we tried to make 20% of our survey outreach to African American households and 20% of our outreach to Hispanic and Latino households. So that was the outreach part. We followed, and I'm going to follow up with that in a second because it's going to be important how we think about the results. For this survey process, we followed sort of best practices, and it's called the total design method. But basically, that involved a 4-step approach to encourage people to participate. So once we got the randomly selected households or residential addresses, every one of those individuals was mailed a postcard. And the postcard said basically, a survey is coming to your household soon on an important topic, and we hope that when it arrives that you will read it and complete it and send it back. And by the way, we have also programmed the survey online, and you're welcome to take it online too. The postcards each had a unique ID. So when they went online to take the survey, if they did, they had to enter in the unique ID. And that guaranteed that we were only going to get one response per household. Right? If we didn't do that, if we just left the survey open, then anybody could take it, and then it would no longer be representative, a random sample of the community. If they wanted to take it online, they could. Or they could wait until the survey showed up in the mail a few days later. So they got the postcard. Then a few days later, we mailed them the survey. And the survey came with a letter explaining the background, explaining how to fill it out. It came with a addressed and postage paid envelope so they could just return it to us. A few days later, they got a reminder postcard saying, we really hope that you saw the survey and that we encourage you to fill it out. Oh, and by the way, you can take it online still if you'd like to. And then a few days later, again, we sent them a second survey, again with postage paid, envelope returned. And so we gave them two postcards that either told them that the survey's coming, one to remind them, and we sent them the survey twice. And then they had the opportunity to take the survey either by filling it out and mailing it back to us or taking it online. So we wanted to make it as convenient as possible. We wanted to make sure that people were poked and prodded without being a hassle. The response rate for the survey, that is the percentage of people who were contacted or residences were contacted and returned a survey, was 23%. Now, 23%, if you don't work in this world, you might think, oh gosh, that means 77% of the people didn't respond. Well, and that's true. I'll tell you, survey response rates for most telephone surveys, 5-6% is the percentage of people who we contact and decide to participate in a survey. 23% is great. It's really high. And it speaks to using this methodology, even though it doesn't go as quickly as a telephone survey, and logistically it's more difficult. The effort meant that those who we reached out to really had an opportunity to participate, and we had a great response in return. Now, survey research is difficult for a lot of reasons, and one of just the realities of survey research And I'm going to want you, if you have the report in front of you, if you could turn to pages 3 and 4, because this is something that's important and I want to talk you through. So although every household in the city of Portland had an equal opportunity to be selected to participate, different people participate at different rates, and it's relatively predictable. Women tend to participate in survey research and public opinion research broadly at a higher rate than men. It's consistent across all sorts of topics and all sorts of issues. It's not unique to this project at all. People with more education tend to participate in research more. People with higher incomes tend to participate in research more. There are a lot of reasons for that that we don't need to cover right now, but it's just a reality of survey research, no matter the methodology. You know, we're doing a mail survey, we're doing a telephone survey, or if we're doing surveys, you know, knocking on people's doors, right? Some people just participate at different rates than others. And that's really important because when the survey results come back, even though everybody might have had an equal opportunity to participate, even if the sample of who we selected to participate in the survey was perfectly representative of the community, the surveys that we get back are highly unlikely to be representative of the community because we know women participate at higher rates than men. We know that older people participate at higher rates than younger people. Now, it's not to such an extreme that you should be concerned about it. These are the realities that we deal with all the time in survey research. There are two ways, at least, to deal with that. One is to accept the results that come back as they come back. And there's a perfectly good rationale for doing that. We can talk about it later if you want. Another is to statistically weight the data. So if you turn to page 4, there's a table that has demographic characteristics, the key demographic characteristics that we wanted to keep track of. It has a column called the unweighted N. That is the unweighted raw totals of the respondent or return surveys we had for each of those categories. And then it has the weighted N, and it has the unweighted percentage, and it has the weighted percentage. Okay? I want to make sure you understand all this. So the unweighted N, that's just the counts of the people who return the survey. And if you look at gender, for example, and you look at, say, male and female, and you look at the column that says unweighted percent, now approximately 50% of the people who were contacted should have been female, and approximately 50% should have been male. But like I told you, females tend to participate at higher rates than men do. And so 57% of the return surveys were female, 42% were male. Now, one way to deal with that is just say, hey, that's what we got. But if we do that, and females and males have different attitudes on the issues, that means the results would be weighted towards the opinions of females, and males would be underrepresented. Okay? Now, we can accept that, or we can choose to do something about it. Now, you can go down the line, too. You can look at Hispanic, non-Hispanic. You can look at the racial categories. You look at age, and you look at area of the community. Those are the things, the key demographics that we looked at. Okay? Now, what we can do, another approach is to weight the data. That means that those respondents who were sort of above what we would expect in the community, and those who returned the surveys below what we expect in the community, we can sort of multiply their answers. So if females had a higher response rate, their answers in the survey count a little bit less, and males who return their surveys count a little bit more, so that the end result, they are weighted towards or to the proportions that they are in the community itself. Okay? That's what weighting and not weighting means. And if that's not clear, by all means, ask me questions and I'll try to explain it. Now, you might think we're manipulating the data, and we are massaging or moving the data around a little bit. It's the sort of thing that it's pretty standard practice, but it's something to be aware of and to consider when you're looking at the results. Now, if you go to the very back of the survey, or back of the report here, it has the entire survey and all the answers. To be very clear and transparent, we reported the percentages of all the data for the weighted numbers and the unweighted numbers. So if you think that one approach is better than another approach, all the numbers are there for you if you want to look at that, okay? The numbers really don't move very, very much. I think the highest difference is 5%. I think there's only 4 or 5 questions in the entire survey where there's a difference of more than 5%. Almost all the questions differ by 1% or 2%. In the report, we footnote every time the percent of the weighted and the unweighted is 5% or greater. I think there's only 4 or 5 times. But be aware of that, consider that. And we wanted to be very clear about what we did and give you all the information so that you can analyze it in the way that you all feel that's the best. Now, I think weighting makes more sense. That's the way we chose to go. But all the numbers are there if you want to look at them both ways. Okay? All right. So that's about that, and I can answer more questions if you want. And then quickly, we mailed out about 5,000 plus surveys. We got back 1,248 surveys. A margin of error for a sample size of 1,248 is 2.8%. Margins of error actually differ slightly for every question based upon how the answers are split or the distribution of the answers. But the largest margin of error, probably the one you should consider and kind of keep in mind, is 2.8%. Now that means that any given answer, we're 95% confident that the true population average or percentage is 2.8% one direction or the other. And if that's not clear, I'm happy to answer questions about that too. But the thing to know about margin of error is the larger the sample size, the smaller and smaller the margin of error gets. That means the larger the sample size, the more and more confident we are in the numbers that we see. If we did a really small sample size, of course, that margin of error would be big, and we'd be less certain that we have the correct answer or an accurate answer. 1,200 is big. Most of the surveys I do are about 400. Even when I do statewide surveys, typically they're only about 600. So to invest and commit to doing a survey of this size is commendable. The great advantage of doing a survey of this size is it allows you to look at demographic groups. You can slice the survey and the responses up into smaller and smaller pieces, whether it's by age or area of the city or by race or whatever characteristics you're interested in, and still be confident in those answers. So I'm going to move on to just past the summary and observations, and I would like you to turn to page 9 if you're there, because I just want to walk you through how to read these charts. We reported on every single question that's in the survey. The entire survey's in the back of the reports with all the individual responses. There are tables and charts in the report for all the questions in the survey. So on page 9, there was a section of the survey that had to do with questions around legitimacy and trust. And these were all pretty standard, what they're called Likert scale questions, the technical term, but they're all agree, disagree statements. So there was a statement, and then the respondent said, I either agree to that statement or I disagree. And then they could strongly agree, they could agree, they could say, I neither agree or disagree. They could disagree or strongly disagree. And you can see the colors indicate agreement and disagreement. Green is agree, orange is disagree. And then we just ordered the items in that section by their level of agreement. And so if you look at chart 1, on the questions that deal with legitimacy and trust, the statement that the respondents agreed to the most was, if I saw a crime happening in my neighborhood, I would call the Portland police to report it. 53% strongly agreed to that statement, compared to 36% agreed to it. So in total, if we look at the agreement side, 89% agreed to that statement. Okay? If you go down to the next highest one, I would work with the Portland police to identify a person who committed a crime in my neighborhood. 52% strongly agreed to that. 36% agreed to that, for a total of, 88% agreeing to that statement. Now, if you go to the next page, there were a number of questions on legitimacy and trust. I somewhat arbitrarily put these into 2 tiers. So that first page has to do with the sort of the top tier, the top half of agreement, and I cut it in half for for page layout for as much as anything. So if we look at the lower tier, if we go to all the way to the bottom, the statement that our respondents agreed to the least was the police in Portland do not use race and ethnicity when deciding whether to stop someone. 7% strongly agreed to that, 16% agreed. So in total, 23% agreed to that statement. Going one up, the one that was the second least agreed to, the relationship between the city and the police, the relationship between the police and the people of the city is very good. 9% agreed to that, or strongly agreed, 23% just agreed. Okay, that's how to read these charts. Now, one other thing to pay attention to the survey, if you look at the statement, it's the third one down here on this chart too. It reads, Portland police treat people respectfully regardless of their gender or sexual orientation. And then in parentheses, it says that star REV. So if you have the report in front of you, I want you to turn to page 29. This is important to understand how to read this report. So in my chart, or in the chart, the question or the statement reads, Portland police treat people respectfully regardless of their gender or sexual orientation. If you go to page 29, it's 1, then the letter H. And there the statement reads, Portland police treat people disrespectfully because of their race or ethnicity. Okay? Some of these statements in the survey were written in a positive frame, and some were written in a negative frame. For the purposes of our analysis and to make things consistent in the reports and charting, those statements that are written in the negative in the survey, we flip the responses. Does that make sense? So if you disagree to that statement, that's like agreeing to a statement that's in the positive. Okay? So all the places in the charts where it says REV, that means the response categories are reversed. So if you said strongly disagree, it's going to show up as strongly agree in the chart. Okay? If we didn't do that, you'd see all these charts bump all over the place. Reversing the response categories allows you to make a consistent evaluation across these items when they're either written in a positive frame or when they're written in a negative frame. Okay? And so then we mark all of them in the charts, and you can refer to the back of the report to look at the original wording and look at the original breakdowns in the responses. Okay? That's how to read that. I want to draw your attention to one more set of charts to make sure you sort of can follow what we did. So charts 1 and 2, they were all questions having to do with what we called legitimacy and trust. Now, there are important differences by different categories that we're interested in making sure we paid attention to. Race, gender, age, for example. To make things simpler for you and to summarize the data, we took an average of all the items in the legitimacy and trust section and then looked at them by those different categories. So chart 3 summarizes the average of the responses from legitimacy and trust by race, by age, by area. So you can quickly see, well, whites, on average, responded more agreement to these statements than did African Americans. Asian Pacific Islanders agreed more to these statements than did Native Americans. So we can see, on average, as a group, as a dimension, we can see that there's differences by these categories. And that's what that summation is. Now, there's a part of the reason we, sorry. Excuse me. Part of the reason we did that is when we look at the data, I have 138 pages of numbers that look at every single question by every single demographic group. And it's very, very difficult to read through everything and try to summarize everything. And so we tried to do that here, but all the information is available to you if you want to look at the individual questions by the different categories. But it was our way to try to summarize some of the big themes and show some of the differences by the demographic characteristics that we're most interested in. You'll see in the report sections called demographic differences. And so, for example, on page 11 towards the top, it's in orange lettering, it says demographic differences. In the report, we've highlighted differences that were statistically significantly different. And that's a term that researchers like to use and pollsters like I like to use. And I just want to describe quickly what that means. Sometimes you're going to see differences when you do a survey that are just random error, random chance. And if you did a survey over and over again, you're just going to run into differences that are there by random chance. Statistically significant means we did the math, and if the difference that we see is large enough that it would be very rare that you would see a difference of that size unless it was a real difference in the community. Because you're going to see some differences just by random chance, but these are the ones that are bigger than random chance, okay? And we've called those out in the report. So all the sections that say demographic differences, those are the differences on questions or dimensions that are big enough to say mathematically, statistically, these are differences that are worth paying attention to because they're not likely to occur by chance. Statistical significance is different than meaningful, right? Sometimes something might be statistically significant. That is, it exists and we don't think it exists by chance, but it's actually not that important, right? And that's a judgment call that you have to make. But we wanted to call out for you that these differences that we're pointing out do bear attention because they are unlikely to exist by chance. And then you decide, do they matter? Are they important? Should you do something about it? Okay. So that's really what I wanted to do. If you want to turn back to the summary and observations, so on page 6, 7, and 8, we've tried to highlight what we thought were key findings. We're not making, this report doesn't make recommendations or suggestions, but things that we thought, based upon our understanding and knowledge of the purpose of this project and your goals, what's important to note. And I'm going to highlight a few that just on page 7, because I think that they're probably the most noteworthy as far as my understanding. But if you look at page 7, the top bolded statement there, members of marginalized populations often had more negative perceptions of the Portland police. And you can see a couple, the bullet points below, some different populations. And then you'll see below that sort of bolded section, Hispanic respondents expressed specific concerns about police performance rather than one consistent viewpoint. Hispanics, non-Hispanics actually in a lot of ways were similar to each other. There were a couple places that are worth noting, perhaps. One is that Hispanic respondents contacted the police. They were more likely to come away dissatisfied. That's probably the biggest difference around Hispanic, non-Hispanic. The next bolded sort of point, African American respondents expressed consistently more negative views about Portland police, including with trust, using too much force are 2 points. And another, I think, my understanding, part of this process, those experiencing mental health or people in their lives also tended to have more negative impressions. Now, when I say more negative, I mean that's a mathematical question, right? They rated things differently. So that's when I say more negative, that's what I mean, that their responses were different than other groups who tended to be more negative. Whether in what to do about that, the weight that you should put on that, I'm not making a comment on. That's really for your judgment. But my understanding of this project and what's driven it, those are probably some things that I want to highlight. And then I'll start at the top. So I know I'm bouncing around here, but the top of page 6, I think I'll leave on maybe a more positive note. Portland respondents look favorably upon the Portland Police Bureau when it comes to crime fighting. Our respondents in the survey said they were willing to work with the police. Nearly 9 in 10 respondents were willing to call the police if they saw crime. 2 in 10 said that they felt disrespected. Fewer than 2 in 10 found the police untrustworthy. And you can go on through the report, and I know that you will. I'm going to stop there. My goal was really to explain how to read this report, what we did, highlight a couple things, and then turn it over to you. I'm available to answer questions about the methodology or any of the results. But with that, I think I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you. I have 2 technical questions. In the definition of marginalized, what's included there?
What's included?
Marginalized. That's a broad category. I wanted to know what the elements of who you identified as marginalized.
It would, in this survey, it's defined as non-white, not experiencing mental health issues, not LGBT. Those are the groups.
Those are the marginalized group or the non-marginalized? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the second question was about averages. You can get averages that are consistent of 2 extremes. What do you do about the extremes, or were there any?
Well, you're right. So you can get an average. If say on a 10-point scale, you can get an average of 5 by having a lot of numbers bunched at one end and a bunch at the
Yes.
other, or you can have them all be 5.
Yeah.
And that's a good question. The distribution that you're describing was not. It was fairly consistent across the different demographic groups. That is, for women, for example, didn't have extreme answers and men have sort of mid answers. The distribution was similar across the groups. And then you can see in the individual, so if you look at page 9, for example, if you want to look at the legitimacy and trust questions, the distribution of the answers was similar across the different groups, but the intensity was going to be different, and that's what you see in the averages. Yeah.
Thank you. Okay. Any questions from COAB members? Yes.
So when I read your section on demographic differences,
Yeah.
the question I find myself asking when I see that, of course, certain respondents had a much more negative view than others, let's say white versus African American. So I find myself wondering, well, don't the African American population in Portland have more contact with the police than the white population in Portland on both a voluntary and involuntary basis? And if, for instance, if in an extreme case, if the white folks are having no contact with the police and the African American folks are having very regular contact with the police, is this weighting actually valid? Because we're weighting people who have no contact with the police and what they think about it.
Well, you're asking the right sorts of questions in terms of how to think through the results, and I will just say that those are good questions to ask, and you should consider them. I'm not going to weigh in on whether that interpretation is correct or not. We do in the survey, and I don't have it, I'm not sure what page it is right now, when we asked about contact with the police, and you can look to see what the differences are between the different categories. But you're right, and you might want to think about the results in terms of people's experience, and then therefore how they're evaluating that experience, how frequently they're experiencing, and therefore how they evaluate those experiences. And that's a judgment call that I would encourage you or a judgment that I would encourage you to use as you're looking at the results.
Other COAB? Siadam, Tom, and then Philip.
So my question, take for example the chart on page 11. If a person happens to, or actually that's not a good example. Well, I don't see, how would we be able to, and because a person's identity can be not only about their age and their age and their race, but also if they're LGBT. How are we are able to kind of interpret the data so that we understand if folks are from multiple marginalized groups?
Yeah, that's really difficult. It's a great question, and there are some limitations. I would encourage everybody to sort of have that eye and think about those populations, whether it's anecdotal or thinking about the data with the way it's presented in front of you. But you're right. So when we look at subgroups, so we look at the whole population, it's 1,248, and we sort of cut it up into different groups. Say we cut it up by gender, it's roughly half in each group, and then you cut it by race, you get smaller and smaller categories. So if you go, for example, gender and then race and then LGBT, the number of people that get into those that is in that category is quite small. So small that statistically it's very difficult to make projections about that group as a whole. And so, we can try to make some assumptions or inferences based upon the larger categories. But when we get to those smaller categories that have multiple demographic characteristics that we're interested in, we have to use our judgment to make inferences about the larger.
Were you able to draw any conclusion? Did you drill down that deeply into the data? And if so, were you able to draw any conclusions about the experience of those folks?
We drove down the data to the level that's reported here, so there's larger groups. So we looked at racial categories, we looked at gender, we looked at area, we looked at LGBT, but we did not look at multiples of those. Doing so that the numbers in those groups are generally just too small, that if we tried to make inferences, the risk of making a wrong inference is too great.
Tom?
When you talked about statistical significance, I can't tell in the report if you made findings that some of the survey results were statistically significant or not.
So what we've tried to call out are those that are.
So everything.
So those things that were not discussed, you can assume as a reader they weren't statistically
All right,
significant.
okay.
Yeah.
Philip?
Thank you. So on page 11, I see that the different categories are broken down: white, African American, Asian, Native American, and then there's there's in parentheses there's other, and I'm wondering if you can expand on what the other means. How did you come up with that topic of other?
So if
a person has a specific group, why did we not name out that group? I guess I'm just looking for clarification on that.
Great question. So race is a difficult thing to ask about, and there are first a couple things to know about race and the way it's asked in surveys. One, this survey used the census definitions of race and ethnicity. This is going to be a somewhat long answer to your question. Census uses a two-part question. First, it asks, are you Hispanic, Latino, or Spanish origin, yes or no? It asks everybody, including those who said yes to that first question, what is your race? White, African American, Asian, whatever, the full set of categories. And you could say more than one. So there's two things to know about that and things to think about with the interpretation of the results. First, everybody is two things. You're Hispanic or not Hispanic, and that's what census refers to as your ethnicity. And then you're a race, you're white, you're African American, you're Asian, you're something, or you're multiple, okay? So there's two groups together. Now, a lot of times, in a lot of surveys, that question is not asked as a two-part. A reason for that is that many people who identify Hispanic feel that the racial categories in that second part don't apply to them, that they identify themselves as Hispanic and not Hispanic and white and not Hispanic and African American. They identify as Hispanic. A lot of times what happens is just is this reality of the way that surveys are difficult to write in a way that matches the world. But a lot of times what happens is people who identify as Hispanic choose to identify as other in that second question. Sometimes people just identify as other because they don't want to answer the question or because some of the racial categories don't apply to them. Could be any reason. But that other is that individual did not identify with any of the racial categories that we've offered them. And most of those people identified as Hispanic in the first question.
Great. Yeah, that was a great, clear explanation. I am wondering if instead of having another as a category, it would be possible to have something in the way of, like instead of the other category, you would have something like a line where people could put in what they felt their identity was, and that in itself could develop a new group for statistical analysis. So hopefully you could expand, and because that category is a little vague, I was just wondering if there was a way to get more clarity for that in the future.
I could go back to the original data. We may have done that. I can't recall for certain. I will say 4% of the respondents identified as other, which is about 45 people. If we had offered, and I just can't recall if we did or not, it would mean we'd probably get 15 to 40 different answers that would be difficult. It would be good, it would be valuable information, I don't want to discount it, but it would be difficult statistically to do anything with it.
Thank you, yeah.
Ime.
Oh, wait, I had another question. Oh, Ime, you can go ahead. If you
Sure.
Okay. And maybe your question is the same as my question, and then I wouldn't have to repeat myself, so go ahead.
Okay. I'm wondering, you held up a packet of the raw data when you were doing your presentation. I'm wondering if we're going to get access to that as well, so if we will be able to see all of the answers?
We've provided it and then to the team, and then it'll be shared.
It was on the website.
It was on the website.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else want to go? Any COAB members have any other questions before I ask my other question?
Go ahead, Bill.
Okay. I have a question regarding respondents and how they responded. So you said there was the Likert scale, and I was wondering if there was any area for them to expand other than the numbers. I'm wondering if there was any qualitative data that was used.
Very little. At the end of the survey, they could put a few comments, and some people did. We weren't tasked with doing that analysis, but there was that option. But the survey was almost exclusively quantitative. It'd be another project to do something different.
More questions? So now that you have had a chance to review some of the data, are there things that the COAB feels it needs to discuss here in terms of either what you find we may need to look at further, or you may need to look at further, or surprises, or observations? Ime.
First, I do just want to thank you for going through and making sure to mark the demographic differences, being sure to have queer, trans, and QTPOC folks as part of that, even if they didn't make it into these graphs. But I think both what you've presented and the answers you've given us today point to the problems with quantitative research, right? Like, you may disagree with me because you may be quantitative oriented.
I do a lot of qualitative work as well.
Okay. So, because we are trying to look at very specific things like the impact of use of force on people with mental health issues, right? And how to change that.
Mm-hmm.
And so you were tasked with giving us a statistically valid view of the entire city.
Mm-hmm.
And the entire city does not have mental health issues, right? And the entire city also does not interact with the police during, a crisis in which use of force is used. So there are ways in which groups that don't have these experiences are overrepresented because it has to be statistically significant, right? So for instance, say Autumn's question about intersections. Numbers-wise, we can't get to that, right? Qualitatively, we can.
So let me try. Those are fabulous questions and fabulous ways to think about it. So, any survey, and this one too, is one tool in your tool chest as you go forward. You're gonna gather information, and you have from all sorts of sources. You're gonna have community conversations. You're gonna use your good judgment and your relationships with the community to think through all these issues. This is one piece to add to that. And you're absolutely right. This was meant to be an assessment of the broad community, not of any particular group. Both will be important for you for decision making going forward. This was just one piece of the puzzle.
And it's I hope that you hear that it's a very helpful piece, right? And it's both very helpful in getting us that larger picture of the city, which is required by the settlement, but also, like I said, to break these things down in ways that sort of reflect what we are tasked with. It's very, very helpful as that first piece. And I think that having access to the raw data will help us form those focus groups and or other forms of qualitative work by looking at the raw data and seeing where are these intersections, what did some people write in. But I just want to say for us doing the work, right, that this is one piece that gives us the big picture, and that we need that focused picture as well. And so that is the next step, and that this is really well done and really helpful in us doing that, but it's the first step, right?
So the message is more to the COAB than to John.
Yes.
Yes,
Okay.
I take this.
All
I would
right.
only add one more piece of that. You've asked good questions. I'm sure you have many more that you'll be asking each other going forward. And the survey is going to answer some of them, hopefully answer a lot of them. But it's also going to illuminate some places where you realize you need more information or you need different information. And that is a value of a survey, to shed light on what we don't know. So it can do so much, and it can also point you into new questions you need to ask. And so hopefully you'll do that as well.
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
I have Siadam and then Michelle. Thank you.
Particularly, I'm interested in how folks with different intersections may have responded to question 19, which is on page 27, comfort level and calling police for family member in mental crisis, to see what the many diverse respondents said, who was mostly in the somewhat uncomfortable side and who was mostly in the somewhat comfortable side. That would have been helpful.
You're asking about the characteristics of people who fall into those different categories. Is there any way to get that information?
Yeah, so what's reported below are we describe some of the differences, the details we have, and it's in this full set of crosstabs if you want to know every single percentage. But yeah, all that information is available. For the purposes of this report, if we called out every single possible data point and didn't try to summarize things, it would be as big as this report here is here, and probably less helpful to as a community document. But all that information is available for you. Yes.
Michelle.
I want to thank you for your work. I think it's an excellent job, and I also agree with what Ime is saying and Siadam are saying. But one piece of this that I think is very valuable is that we can, even though the methodology may be a tad bit different, we can compare this to the previous community report that was done by Portland State to see if the community feels any differently about the police 2 years later. And I think that's very important because there have been some changes made in the police bureau with the behavioral health unit. And I would hope that this report reflects a community change about that. If not, I think that's a serious problem that we need to take a look at.
We weren't tasked with doing a year-to-year analysis, and there were some reasons. There's some differences in the survey, differences in the methodology. But I do know that report exists, and if this group wants to do a side-by-side, that's that information is available. Would encourage you to do it.
Two quick questions for you. I'm not a mathematician. I'm not very good with numbers, so let's just say, for example, hypothetically, you have 30,000 people who live in the city of, or 300,000 people who live in the city of Portland, and we have the number of respondents that we have, 1,200. So are you able to analyze what percentage we needed to be able to have an average representative sample of respondents? Does that make sense?
It does. It's a wonderful question. It's one I get a lot as a survey researcher. So there's, I'm going to give you a very non-technical answer. First, we design the outreach, the number of people that we sent, a number of households we sent a survey to try to get 1,000 surveys back. That is, we assumed a response rate lower than we actually had because we were aiming for, we thought 1,000 was a pretty good number. Okay, let me walk through 1,000. The margin of error, as I described before, gets smaller and smaller. Okay. The margin of error gets smaller and smaller the larger the sample. So the survey gets more and more accurate the larger we get. Now, this is a tricky thing to get your head around, and I'm not going to go through the math, but the margin of error is basically independent of the population size. That is, the margin of error for this survey, doing a survey of 1,200 people in a city the size of Portland, is the same margin of error if we did a survey of 1,200 people in the state of Oregon. It's the same margin of error if we did a survey of 1,200 people in the country. The population size does not affect the margin of error. It's not exactly true. It affects it when the population gets very small. But once we get to populations the size we're dealing with, the cities or counties or the state or the country, the survey is just as accurate whether we're doing Portland or whether we're doing the state of Oregon or doing the country. The reason 1,200 is good, as I said before, is not so much because of being able to look at the total sample of the 1,200, but it's to be able to look at subparts, to be able to look at gender differences or look at race differences, because those parts get smaller and smaller as we cut up the survey to do that.
That makes sense. Thank you. I know it's might be a difficult question, and I just have all these thoughts going through as I'm looking at this. How you measured everything. So I do have one more question. For the respondents who live in the city of Portland, did you include information about people who live in Portland, about how long they've been residents here? I'm just trying to think if a person has been living in Portland for a month compared to a person who has been living in Portland for 20 years, how their experiences, how they interact with the police would be different. And their measurements might not be accurate if they haven't lived here as long. So I'm wondering if that was included.
So we did not ask that question, so we did not capture that bit of data, so we can't look at things that way. I'll push back a little bit on their experiences not being as accurate. Their experiences would be representative of what their experiences are. If you are new to Portland and you're a Portland resident, your opinions are what they are. And you all need to consider them regardless if they've been here for 20 years or for 2 months. But we didn't capture it, so we can't look at it that way.
Thank you.
So, COAB members, how do you think you can use this data to inform the work of the Community Outreach Committee or other work that you're looking at? Are there ways in which we need more? I have here there's a need for qualitative research, some of which will be done. We want to compare it to previous reports and to look more deeply into the intersection of demographics, if possible, or where possible, perhaps using the raw data. Are there other things that the COAB should be considering at this point in terms of this report? Let's go with Bud and Thorpe.
So I'm going to go out and download the raw data since I'm a data analyst by trade. So I'll see if I can get to a place where if other COAB members have questions and want to look deeper at something, that I can facilitate that. And one thing that I see in here as low-hanging fruit, really just a glaring thing, an opportunity for COAB, is the point that just across all the communities, across all the demographics, we're hearing, I'm not seeing community policing happening. I'm not seeing my police officers in my neighborhood. I don't have an interaction with them where I know their first name. So that, to me, that's just like, wow, that's big. That's something that we need to talk to Jimmy about and see, well, okay, how can we improve there? Because that's just glaring.
Oh,
Yeah, thank you, Bud. And I do agree with you about your concerns on that. I was thinking this is a great tool, and to have another with the other survey that was conducted through PSU, because we haven't been through that data, being able to compare those and analyze what that means for the PPB. One thing for sure is this is proof of the reason we're here, and that there's a persistent problem, a persistent and clear problem, because the people who have mental health issues are having a lot of negative encounters with the police, and we need to really go through with our work. I'm curious to compare the two results and see what we find out, see what we can focus on and make improvements on. So that's really all I wanted to say.
other comments, observations, additions? Ime.
So I guess the thing that feels most important to me in this moment is that, 17% of people with mental health issues are reporting that they feel like they may be stereotyped by the police. And it seems to me that using this data to start to understand what their experience is and to ask deeper questions about what that stereotyping, what that means for them and what they would like to have done differently is sort of essential. And looking, which is what our subcommittee does, my subcommittee, the mental health subcommittee, looking at what is already being done by the police that may not be translating, right? So, speaking anecdotally, a lot of my clients don't know a BHU exists. Therefore, their experiences are based on either their own experience of an individual police officer or, community stories that circulate about the ways that certain community members have been treated poorly. And so to make sure that that information about the ways things are changing in the police force are getting to them, but also that we are understanding, are those changes actually the changes they want? Are those the changes that are actually helping them? Are those the changes that actually make them feel safer and more able to trust the police, and for that trust to be reciprocated, right? For the police to actually be trustworthy. So I think just those two little bullet points are sort of essential to our work.
Other comments, observations? John, we want to thank you very much for coming to give us this presentation.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
So it seems that perhaps the COAB could do some thinking among itself, among the subcommittee members, as to continuously look at ways to use the data here, either to identify some place to look or to ask more questions, or however you see this fitting into the work that's being done. Okay, so we're going to take a break now. And when we come back, we're going to have public comment. And I think, we'll stop there. All right? 15 minutes or 7 o'clock. Come back at 7, please. to resume our meeting, please? Almost. What?
I just wanted to let
Public comment section, and I have quite a few people signed up. And the microphone is microphone here. If you step to that microphone, we'd appreciate it so that you get recorded. You become a part of history. I have Dan Handelman. And the public input is 3 minutes.
Okay. Hi, good evening. I'm Dan Handelman with Portland Cop Watch. I understand that you had your retreat yesterday and last Wednesday, and you probably saw the correspondence that we sent to you and the COCL and the DOJ and the city, expressing concern that this body was set up to be a transparent public body and was repeatedly told not to have meetings of a quorum of your membership over email or any other kind of forum without the public being able to have access to it, and then you designed 2 meetings that were held completely out of the public eye. I've heard through channels that the city attorney was shutting down conversation if it strayed into COAB business, but frankly, the city attorney is not somebody that we have faith in on these matters, and it would have been a good idea for you to have a reporter there. What they do with executive committee meetings for other public bodies is a reporter sits in, and then if business is done, they're allowed to report out on that. But any kind of the personal stuff or anything that's covered, as it's not part of the public business, they can't report on it. So I was hoping that's how you would handle it. I look forward to seeing whatever comes out from the COCL's office, but it was not done very well. Also find it interesting that cookies get applause, but information about oversight gets a smackdown. So I'm not quite sure why that works out that way. This survey, like the other survey before it, if you look at the averages of the responses, they're all in the 3 area out of a 1 to 5 range, which means they're all right around in the middle. And so if there were a lot of really good things, things would be tipping towards the 4, and most of them aren't. So we still have kind of a meh response, which is what was in the previous survey done by PSU. I asked Mr. Corbett why African Americans were sampled at 9% when they're 6% of the population, and he said that it's 9% of the adult population, 18 and over, which means I might have to rethink how we're looking at traffic stop data if what he says is true. I just wanted to know too that like last time you were here, I parked over near where Keaton Otis was shot and walked over here in honor and memoriam of somebody who had mental health issues and was killed by the Portland police almost 6 years ago now. The vigil continues for him every month on the 12th of the month. We have a new issue, the Cop Watch newsletter, the People's Police Report. I have them here. I can hand them out at the end of the meeting. And I also have the comments that we handed in the last meeting about, half of it is about the policies that you may or may not get to tonight. If anybody didn't get this from me and wants it, when you get to your voting, I can hand them to you. Thank you.
Thank you. No,
I have a response to
No.
Dan, or
No.
no? Hold-
no, not this time. Paul Fishman?
Thank you. I'm Paul Fishman, live in Southeast Portland. I want to say thank you to the board. I've been to probably most of these meetings and mostly observing, very interested. I've gotten active on the CEOP subcommittee. This is very, very important work. I know you know that, and I'm not sure people from the community tell you how much we appreciate what you're doing and the amount of time and the commitment you're making to this effort, and it's really, really fantastic. These are critical issues for our community. They're critical issues nationwide, as we know if we watch the news or listen to the news. A lot of people are going to look at what we did in Portland because this is an experiment. And you folks are the, well, I don't want to say lab rats, but you folks are the front line of that experiment, okay? And when we're finished, and I say we because the community has to be part of this. I want to say something about the retreat, which I was going to say I don't have channels like Dan has, but I think the retreat was a very, very good idea. I've been involved on boards and committees and advisory groups, et cetera. And you always have a wide diversity of opinions and goals and agendas. That's part of diversity. But the important thing is to be able to work together and to trust each other. And a retreat can help accomplish that. And as a citizen of this community, it was fine with me. I was very happy to hear that there was going to be a retreat where some of the issues that I think exist on this board could be talked about and could be hopefully started to be worked out. I know Jimmy's not here tonight, so I'm just going to say quickly, on the CEOP subcommittee, of which I'm not an official member, that's another story, we'd like to invite people in the community to come to those meetings, people on the COAB to come to those meetings. Right now we're working on a talk or a presentation that a speakers bureau will go out into the community and present. And one thing I heard here, and I've read through the survey report, which is a very good report. One thing we're talking about is looking at the survey data and saying, okay, where do we need to focus our outreach? What parts of our community will the survey help us find places where we can go and talk to people because we think it's important? Okay? Anyway, thank you all very, very much. Very much appreciated.
Thank you very much, Paul. David Davis.
So my name's David Davis. I'm representing Fight the Sweeps Portland, which is a group that fights against homeless sweeps, and also Multnomah County Cop Watch. I have a few things to talk about. The homeless state of emergency that's going on. There's supposed to be a moratorium on homeless sweeps and citations issued to homeless people, but it seems like this continues. I have video evidence that I brought here tonight that I wasn't able to play for some reason, but it shows a homeless sweep in progress where a mentally ill guy with schizophrenia and different health issues, he's a diabetic. He was issued a citation by the Portland police as they forcibly removed him from his tent outside of Bud Clark. These videos are up online at the Fight the Sweeps PDX Facebook group. So basically, there's a lot of different stuff going on in this little city of ours too. You have the police commissioner who's also the mayor, which is troubling in itself, and I think that these different offices need to be totally separated. You know, that's a level of transparency that, you know, this leads to total corruption when you have a joint office of dual public officials. I think we can afford the extra $100,000 or whatever it takes to hire those guys separately. But recently, I was actually kicked out of City Hall for filming the arrest of Barry Joe Stoll, and I was permanently excluded from City Hall simply for filming his arrest. I was also tackled by a G4S security goon, and who's also the police commissioner's personal bodyguard. I have a criminal case over this, and the surveillance footage has been released to my lawyer in an altered manner where they only released partial video footage. I was accused of pushing this G4S security goon, who's a former LAPD or LA cop, and his name's Mike Cohen. He falsified a police report against me. He's the mayor's personal bodyguard, who's also the police commissioner. So obviously that shows that these guys have no problem using a paramilitary force like G4S, who happen to be one of the biggest mercenary corporations in America. These guys are former Whacking
Mr.
Hut.
Davis, your time is up.
Okay, so hopefully you guys will look into that a little in the G4S links to the police.
Nancy Newell? It would be helpful to have comments that are relevant to the work that the COAB is doing. We don't really have any purview over the police in the way that the information is being presented.
Well, now I've got a comment. The police commissioner is responsible for the police force behavioral policy right down the line. And who else can you hold accountable but a police commissioner, for heaven's sake? And he's elected, and he's supposed to represent the homeless, the mentally ill, not just the activities in city council. And as a matter of fact, this fellow, the city filed a lawsuit against him, and as soon as Joe Walsh won his case under Judge Simon in federal court that the mayor could not eliminate him, so then Keith was dropped by the police department and the city. So this is a very serious issue. It is a photojournalist that we should welcome to our community, representing people who are freezing to death, who are scared to death. 5 out of 4 Americans are living paycheck to paycheck. This is a valid statistic. We have more mental illness in our society than we've ever had. And we need to address these issues. If not here, where? And we really want to talk to everybody and try to work this out in a very helpful way, because we are in desperate need of change. And a fellow like this that has a camera, and his body is often injured because he takes those risks, and he's not violent. And I think we should applaud him. So for you to say that it isn't appropriate what he's offering to the COAB, to me, is really like a slap in the face. And I can see where all this type of work we should encourage more, that more people have the courage to say what's happening in their community, because I really don't feel the survey is representative nearly enough to what truly is going on. You know, when they classify people as white, well, we are marginalized. We were marginalized where I grew up for years. The police could care less. Murders, taxi cab drivers killed. It went on for 15 years at least. And you know, there's no record of that in the survey. You're not even getting those conditions and how they've changed to help you make decisions here. So it's my 3 minutes up. I don't want to go over.
Oh, you still have a few seconds, Nancy.
Okay, that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I can't read the first name here, but it's Adams is the last name. Pat. Oh, Pat.
My name's Pat Adams. I'm a concerned citizen, live in Southwest. And my observations about this relationship, this sweet relationship between the people and the police, fundamentally there is no conflict between police and people and citizens. You know, police are citizens, and citizens need police. And it is primarily the job of the community. Policing is the job of the community. And we hire these police to help us with that job. And what I see is that there's been a break in the trust between the people and the police. And it's around safety. And I think that we need to heal that relationship. And I personally feel that the relationship is between the people and the officers who are on the street. And I propose to the accountability committee that we go to these officers and we ask them, how would you hold us accountable? How would you hold yourselves accountable? And have them tell us how they would make this city safe. And then we could come up with our own list. What would we hold them accountable for? What would we hold ourselves accountable for? And put the list down and see where they match. It seems to me that there can be an idea that this is a zero-sum game, that in order to make citizens safe, we have to make police less safe. And that never wins. All right? If we're going to make this work, we have to find a solution that makes both citizens and police safer. Thank you.
Thank you, Pat. I have, Brad, are you here? I'm going to read for Ann Brayfield.
Hello, my name is Brad Taylor. I'm the city's mental health specialist, and I really appreciate everyone being here tonight, so thank you. And I will be reading on behalf of Ann Brayfield, who's participating through the live stream. I am Ann Brayfield, concerned citizen. As I have been working through the grand jury transcript of the death of Michael Johnson in November of 2015 in a parking lot outside Good Sam in Northwest Portland, I have found myself both deeply saddened and discouraged. Killing members of our community in mental health crisis not only results in the death of the person in crisis, but also lessens the humanity of all of us, including the officers involved in this killing. When and how will we stop the killing of our community members in crisis? Many of the circumstances and law enforcement individuals involved in this death were present in prior deaths of persons in crisis in this community. I ask that this body provide leadership on behalf of the community by looking at the circumstances of Michael Johnson's death, asking the hard questions, and making recommendations that bring our community back to its humanity. Thank you.
Thank you, Brad. Okay, I know that at least, is there anybody else that wants to make public comment?
I would like
to.
Hi. I didn't originally plan on talking, but I just wanted to expand on something.
Would you give us your name?
Oh, my name is Tara Parrish.
Thanks.
When Mr. Davis was testifying about Barry Joe Stoll getting arrested in City Hall, it was because Mr. Stoll was having a mental health crisis and was being very verbally open about that. It's all on the video. You can see it. So it is relevant. It is completely relevant. And Mr. Davis didn't have quite enough time to go into the whole story. Mr. Stoll was in City Hall saying, I'm having a mental health crisis. I need an ambulance. None was called. He was tackled and taken down. He is in jail. This happened November 25th. Mr. Stoll is in jail right now because he cannot make the bail for his mental health crisis. And this is how the Portland police handled it. So I just wanted to say that it is absolutely relevant. This just happened. And I really would like it if you guys would be a little bit more aware of this kind of thing that's going on and actually listen to the people that come in off the street and relate these things. And I'm really glad that I have a video that I can show you that completely will back up everything I've said. And I hope you go to, was it Stop the Sweeps Portland? Fight the Sweeps Portland and look at the video, and it is also on YouTube. And I would really like to call attention that Mr. Stoll is still in jail. Thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yes.
My name is Robert West. I'm with FilmThePolice911.com, and I am bipolar. I do have mental illness, and as far as I go out and film the police on Christmas, I had an individual threaten me with a gun in front of the police, and the police did nothing. When Keith was out one time, someone spit in his face in front of the police, they did nothing. Another person was assaulted last weekend, the police did nothing. The police have basically told the people that go out and film the police, talk to the DA, we don't want to talk to you. And we get that. The guy that was assaulted is also bipolar. And we get that time and time again. We go out there, we film the some of the mental health stuff. Most of this time, we go out there, they have their less than lethals out, which they're beanbag guns. Even on someone where someone calls the police and says, "I feel suicidal," they'll bring out a beanbag gun quite a bit. And that is pretty sad. You know, someone's calling for help. If we show up, they rush the beanbag gun back to their car. If the ambulance shows up, they rush the beanbag gun back to their car. Because they know that we will say something. If we see the beanbag gun out, the people in mental health crisis don't need to get beanbagged, they need to be talked to. And the police, a firm message needs to go to the police that when we want to make a police report, if we're a victim of a crime, we deserve the same rights and respect as everyone else. And that's what I wanted to bring up to you guys. And as far as Barry Joe Stahl, he's a good example of what happens when you let the Portland police do what they do. He asked for an ambulance for over 20 minutes. No ambulance showed up, but they brought in an officer that's been notoriously violent toward people with mental health issues and homeless. And so instead of getting the help they got a wrestling match, and the guy's in jail now. And I'll let the rest of my 3 minutes go.
Thank you. Anyone else? I know that Philip wants to speak, COAB member. Go ahead.
Thank you, Kathleen. I want to thank the community for bringing what they had to share today. I hear you, and I'm feeling angry right now. First, before I go into how I'm feeling, I wanted to discuss about the comments made about the retreat. We should have had the retreat before COAB was even established in a perfect world, but it didn't occur that way, and that's fine, but we just had it recently. Overall, it was a good experience. One thing I've learned from the retreat, well, I guess two things. We've gotten to know each other better. Not everyone was able to make it to the retreat, darn it, but we got a chance to get to know each other better. I also learned more about what it means to be a city official, and that is where my anger lies. City officials, in the capacity of a city official for any discussion, it's labeled deliberation, and it's actually illegal under public meeting law. So for us to be able to address topics via email, that is in violation because the public needs to be in attendance, and that's why the law permits us to have discussions today. But my concern is we have two meetings, one regarding business items, voting and discussion or whatever, and the second will be for passing recommendations. We don't have time for a true discussion. So I have concerns about that. And that's just me. What my observations are and what I've realized. I feel like I'm somewhat hitting a wall. I want really just to rip off the Band-Aid and expose the cut, what we have done, what needs to be done to fix it. And we really need to get down to that discussion, and I don't think we've had an opportunity to do that thus far. I think that if that opportunity occurs, we might have a chance to improve things for the future. So the retreat really helped me to see what the problems were. and I'm thankful for that opportunity. I think I'll stop with that, but I hear the community's experience. I videotape every opportunity. I've videotaped those sweeps of homeless individuals many times. I think I probably have over 50 video clips. I've done a lot of videotaping of police, and I do live in downtown Portland, and that's why I'm here. I get it, and I see it. I've experienced it myself. So I want to thank you for sharing, and I want to let you know that we'll get together and discuss your concerns. Thank you.
Thank you, Philip. Bud.
So I wanted to take a moment to thank Philip for his comments. I support you completely on that. I don't understand the heat that we've been taking about the retreat, honestly. We are not paid public officials. We are not elected officials. We are citizens like you who just said, well, we're going to sign up and do this because we really care. I don't appreciate the distrust that's reflected in suggesting that there is some collusion associated with us going behind closed doors to talk about everything about our personal histories, who we are, how we feel, learn how to trust each other, and get an outcome of figuring out how to do your work better. That's all we did, was try to figure out how can we trust each other more and do this work better. How can we come back this year and not delay recommendations from DSUFCS because we're dysfunctional as a group, not have those embarrassing moments ever again. I would have hoped for more support on that. And so again, thank you, Philip, for bringing that up. And on that last point Philip made, I did hear the linkage to the mental health component of policing in what the public was saying, and I'll just say I'm very interested in that, and thank you for bringing it up.
Email.
Sorry. I guess I just want to say thank you to everybody who shows up to these meetings, who takes the time to read all of the materials, and who takes the time to prepare comments and or bring perspectives that we do not have at this table. I think it's hard because those bios are really short and were produced really quickly, for you all to know what the expertise is at the table, what the experiences are at the table. But I think that is equally true for us knowing who you are, right? So I appreciate every single person who comes up to the mic, who shares, because it's a great risk. You are not public officials. You did not sign up for this. And you are sharing stories about losses of children, friends, people in your communities, and people who you have chosen to represent. And I want you to know that that is important, that we are listening, and that we care. And when you send us stuff and say, hey, listen, I think you might be violating a law, I personally take that very seriously. I read it, I talk about it. I don't talk about it over email or in a meeting with more than 2 people. But I do talk about it, all right? So that I know that I am being ethical because I am a member of this community. I was born here in Eugene, and I have lived here in Portland since 1 year old. This is my community. This will be my community when all of this is over. So I appreciate each and every one of your voices, and I hope that you know that, and I hope that you know that everybody at this table does as well. And if you're not getting that message, then please hear it now.
Anyone else? Okay. Can we move on now to subcommittee reports? I'm going to start with the Executive Committee report.
Okay, so the last Executive Committee meeting was on December 18th. The next Executive Committee meeting will be on January 22nd. These meetings are currently at the COAB offices downtown at the Commonwealth Building at 411 Southwest 6th. Sooner or later, they're going to move here to the Ambridge Center, I think, as we move offices or something. So what we did in the last meeting is we talked about the timeline for the CEO plan. There was discussion of focusing on the community outreach and workshops in March. We talked about wanting to try and have the Speakers Bureau worked out and running by May. There was concern expressed about how do we hear from the community on what they would like to see in the CEO plan. How do we make the CEO plan community-driven? We haven't answered that question, but it's an open question that's of concern to us. We talked about subcommittee membership and how we would balance that. We have at least one subcommittee where we've had very low attendance. That's been a problem, and then we have another subcommittee where we just don't even really seem to have enough COAB members have joined, so that's creating many issues. And so what we agreed was we were going to contact any COAB members we thought might have the opportunity to shift between their subcommittees, or COAB members who might take on another subcommittee assignment, to see if that might help resolve the problem. And some of us have already done that, and unfortunately, so far, we have had some good answers, but we haven't gotten an entire solution. So at the next Executive Committee meeting, we're going to try and figure out what is our next step so that all of our subcommittees are properly staffed. We had a discussion on our recommendations, and the feeling seems to be that we want to humanize those recommendations to see how we can make those speak more to the values that we are after than to the specific mechanics of policy and procedure change. We talked about the retreat, really no need to go into that. COCL was going to talk to the DOJ about their requirements on timing, and then we want to talk to the various chairs and the rest of the COAB then about what our priorities are and what timing throughout this coming year should be on things, and whether we should continue to just follow the universal review timeline, or whether DOJ and our own capabilities dictate a different timeline. So next time we meet, we'll be talking about the work plan with Amy. We'll be talking about COAB agendas for upcoming meetings. We'll be diving into work processes again, which will include processes relating to subcommittee membership, COAB membership itself, the possibility of review of the bylaws, and we'll probably talk again about reporting and communications, which we're going to discuss tonight. And then I think that's, and then of course we'll talk about the subcommittee membership thing again to see what our next steps are. That's it. Thank you.
And thank you, Bud. I have one thing to add to that report to give you some information. Senator Gordley has resigned from the Executive Committee, which means that the remaining people who were appointed by City Council members are now eligible to serve on the Executive Committee, and we will get in touch with you to find out your interest and or availability. So with that, we'll move to the Mental Health Subcommittee.
So the Mental Health Crisis Response Subcommittee is held every first Thursday of the month from 7 p.m. to 8:30. We have been at the Center for Intercultural Organizing. We will be there next month, and we will be having a discussion about switching locations possibly after February's meeting. And so the next meeting is February 4th at 7 p.m. We had a pretty robust discussion in the new year. We last year wanted to make sure that we had a bunch of information before us. Again, our goal has been to not duplicate effort, to understand what has already been accomplished by the Portland Police Bureau, and then to weigh in to try to fill in the gaps. We really are trying to be judicious with the time and efficient. So one such topic was we had made a request for the Behavioral Health Unit Advisory Council minutes to be presented to us so that we could review them, as many recommendations and changes and policy changes, procedural changes and recommendations for training has already been made in the context of that body. So with the good help of the COAB and our Portland Police Bureau advisors, we were able to get a copy of the October minutes for the Behavioral Health Unit Advisory Council. And sure enough, there were a series of recommendations that had been made around trauma-informed practices, and we also got to see who specifically was on the committee. There are a number of wonderful community experts, and then there's a range of business, community members, peer supports. It's a very nice range of folks. So we did review that, and we basically, our conclusion was that we agreed with many of the recommendations, and many of those recommendations were similar to recommendations that we had made as a body when we reviewed the mental health directive some months back. We then, Dr. Silver, who's on our committee, had a chance to go to the ECIT training, the Enhanced Crisis Intervention training, and that's a 40-hour commitment that she made to basically sit in and audit that training. She brought back some really good feedback to our committee and was able to also offer feedback to the Portland Police Bureau on things that they could potentially add or review. And one of the things that we wanted to make sure that we also got a copy of is the training manual to see what was missing. We wanted to know who the facilitators were, if there were opportunities for us to make recommendations for who could be added potentially, what other things should be focused on more. So we are still in process, and we're still awaiting that information. We hope to have it by the next meeting. Then we also had an opportunity to review 3 of the policies that are going to be up for formal discussion and recommendation in February, and those included the custody and transportation of subjects, the emergency medical aid, and the medical service policy. We had a chance to talk about, I think, a very thoughtful discussion on from a mental health perspective. We really want to make sure that every policy, whether it's a use of force policy, whether it doesn't matter what committee is wrestling with it, all committees, really subcommittees, should be reviewing the policies and offering their perspective from their respective sort of expertise, if you will. So we had a chance to do that, and we will come poised and prepared to make formal recommendations for what we think should be adjusted within the context of those policies. So really our next agenda on February 4th will primarily be around solidifying our recommendations for changes and amendments to these particular policies. And we will be poised to come before you and the COCL and the COAB to make those in a formal way. We invite you to come. We have a lot of fun. Everyone sits at the table. There's an expectation for civility and disagreement, but you can disagree without being disagreeable. And so we invite you to come and join us. Again, that's at the Center for Intercultural Organizing, and Happy New Year.
Thank you. Going to hear from the Accountability Subcommittee. I think V is texted in.
Yes, just as a reminder, the chair of the Accountability Subcommittee, Mayor Liviani Riviere, is watching the live stream tonight, but is unable to deliver the subcommittee report. She writes, as chair of the Accountability Subcommittee, I will forego the update for the current meeting, until the upcoming meeting. I think this will better serve the community.
Thank you. Yes.
May I say something?
Yes, Rochelle.
I wanted to say something about the Accountability Subcommittee. I am not a member, but I attend regularly.
You want to speak into your mic?
Okay. I am not a member of the Accountability Subcommittee, but I attend regularly. And following what Bud said, the Accountability Subcommittee, as people know when we originally started it, is hurting because we only have 2 COAB members on that committee, and the committee really can't function very well that way. So, you know, there are a variety of methods that we could use to fix it. One was to allow a person to be on more than 2 committees, but that was not something that people or the executive committee seemed to want to do. So I would encourage those members of the executive committee or other subcommittees who are only on one committee to please consider the accountability subcommittee. It's a very, very important subcommittee. And if that doesn't happen, then I would ask consideration to move that work to the Data System Use of Force Compliance Committee, who that committee I think is prepared to do the work. But a lot of good things are happening. We're having people come regularly and report on the accountability system as it exists. But because there's 2 members and often one member doesn't show, we can't vote on anything, we can't do anything. And so please consider if you can join. Thank you.
Thank you, Rochelle, and that is a topic for discussion with the executive committee. Go ahead, Bud.
I just wanted to ask Tom a question as the chair of DSU-FCS. On the recommendation that Rochelle just made, how do you feel like if we did get into a situation where we felt like we might have to bring accountability under the scope of DSU-FCS, how would that work? Do you think it would work out well, or?
I think ideally there'd be a standalone accountability subcommittee, but it's been months now that we've tried to recruit additional members. There is a great deal of community interest. The meetings are well attended, but we haven't even been able to select community members for the subcommittee because we don't have a quorum, I guess, because it would take 2 of us to vote. To answer the question, although it's not my preference, I guess, in a perfect world, I think the Data Systems Use of Force Compliance Subcommittee is well-staffed and can do the work. And I don't think welcome is exactly the word I would use, but we would take that on and do the work if that's the viable option. At least that would be my recommendation to the subcommittee.
Thank you.
So Tom, you're up next with the Data Systems Use of Force Subcommittee report.
I'm going to try to just encapsulate the last 3 months because we haven't reported. We've continued to work on use of force recommendations. We've had to revisit some of those. We've now prepared, I think, a dozen recommendations with multiple subparts. 4 of those were approved in December, and the other 8, either tonight or in the second meeting this month, hopefully will get presented and voted on. We have lost Brandon Hamilton, who was a community member, at-large member. He's taken employment out of the country. We will miss him. He was valuable in terms of his thinking and his input. What we're in the process of beginning to look into, besides accountability issues, perhaps, are training issues related to use of force. And we're wrestling with, I think, a methodology, how to do that best. And people have presented on the issue. We are reviewing some documents, and I think probably, if not at this month's meeting, soon we will be able to begin looking at training, which seems like the follow-up to making the recommendations on use of force policies. Beyond that, I can simply say that it's a vigorous, interesting subcommittee. People are committed to doing the work, and I'm hopeful, particularly if we end up taking on the accountability work, that the community members that have been attending that subcommittee so far will move with us, because we will need your help and ideas.
Thank you, Tom. Is anyone here from the Community Engagement and Outreach Subcommittee prepared to do that subcommittee report? Okay. Jimmy's not here tonight. Is this mic working? Oh, okay. I can barely hear. Oh, now I can hear it. Well, I guess we'll ask for Jimmy to give us a report next time. Were you about to raise your hand, Philip?
Yes, I just wanted to add on to Tom's comment about the use of force subcommittee meetings. After the holidays, Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's, and it was all in a very short time, so many holidays, it was fairly overwhelming. Now that those are past us, we've got more time to be able to really dig in. And I'm very excited about it because the recommendations that we've been going through, and now we're ready to delve into the training and get to the crux of it. We've gone to some training classes, and we've touched on some, the EIS a little bit, and now those recommendations we are finished. We want to get moving forward with the training, and that was just what I wanted to say.
Any comments or questions from the board? Okay, we'll move forward to the next agenda item. Reporting and communications process. Bud?
Thank you. If you will turn to the second page in the packet that begins with the COAB Advisory Board meeting agenda, you will see the Community Oversight Advisory Board Reporting and Communications Process Revision 1. So, to be clear, this is a process. It's not a recommendation or anything that requires voting. It's more something that the Executive Committee feels, with good reason, has great value to COAB, something that we want to get going, and actually responds to complaints that we've had from some of our COAB members. As a matter of fact, about the Executive Committee and our lack of transparency with the rest of COAB. So to be clear on purpose, informing and engaging stakeholders, this is, we were formed by the efforts of groups like the Albina Ministerial Alliance, Human Rights Commission, Portland Commission on Disability. We owe it to those folks to make sure that we're keeping them aware of what's going on now, what's coming up next, things like that. So that's one purpose. We also feel that by reaching out and engaging better with them, we have the opportunity to hear back from them, to hear their feedback, and that feedback empowers us, because it now allows us to say, we are responding to the needs and ideas of our stakeholders, not just our own, but theirs. We believe it will create better and smoother functioning of the COAB by creating a means by which we regularly and monthly report, and it'll make things like the time we just went through here in this meeting a lot smoother and a lot easier. And it will provide greater transparency to the public, because these can then be published on the website where people can come and get them whenever they want, see what's going on in a subcommittee, what's coming up in a subcommittee, decide if their attendance is appropriate, et cetera, et cetera. So, regarding reporting, there is a template on, I hope there's a template. Guess what? It didn't get printed, so. Or is it?
Yeah, it's there.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. All right, I see it. It's printed in a different format. I didn't recognize it. So there's a format in the back that basically is very light. It's oriented on simple bullet points. No need to go into great depth here. Just list out the objectives of your subcommittee. That shouldn't change from month to month. It's just there to inform the public. The last time you met as a subcommittee, who attended, what you accomplished. The next time you're meeting, what you intend to achieve in that next meeting, and then any issues, and this one's important, issues that you formally want to document and say, this is something that our subcommittee can't resolve on their own. Let's get the executive committee or somebody else involved to help us out with this. So this is where you escalate something and ask for help, and we'll start actually formally tracking those. As far as how this is reported, if you look in the detail here, the executive committee chair will then take all the reports from the individual subcommittees, of which the executive committee is one, synthesize those into one document, and then that can be shared with stakeholders by the people who work with those stakeholders. So some of you work with a particular stakeholder, and then COCL works with AMA and others. So this gives us one communication that we can share with them on a regular basis through email or what have you. So with that, I'm going to stop talking and listen to feedback.
Alicia.
So I appreciate the general desire to standardize a process for active feedback and collecting it. I'm wondering, so I typically go to the page, to the COAB sort of website to check on notes and minutes, and it sort of seems like it's a little bit of a duplication of effort if the minutes are being taken in the minutes are being taken at the subcommittee meetings and posted online, and then these forms will, this template will also be posted online as well, correct?
Yes.
And so I guess more of my question was, is it the means by which the information is being presented that's complicated, or is it is it accessibility, people not wanting to, what prompted or what motivated this? Because we already do post, which I think is pretty transparent, post agendas. We also post, the notes are posted on the website.
So to answer your question, we had received a number of complaints, including complaints about the executive committee, that what we were doing in our meetings was fairly opaque and needed to be shared with the rest of the COAB. We've heard similar things about some of the other subcommittees, and we've heard that both from COAB members and also from the public. So that was part of what we were responding to. And I think this also folds in with the new process for meeting minutes that COCL is working on, which is it's going to be a well-working process, but it's going to create a fairly expansive document for meeting minutes that could be very difficult for an individual to sift through. So this provides a very simple bullet item list, certainly not expecting that anyone would spend more than 5 to 10 minutes out of their week writing this report. But that is not said in any way to diminish your feedback. I'm hearing you and thinking about that.
I mean, I don't know, it kind of seems counterintuitive. If the desire is for more information and to be less opaque, I would assume that people will want more of the sort of expanded version of the notes as opposed to some sort of Cliff Note version. But that's just me.
Okay. Yeah. We can discuss that in executive committee. Thank you.
Other comments, observations, recommendations? Philip?
Yeah, I want to respond to Alicia's comment. I think that's a really good question, Alicia, and I appreciate that question. I appreciate you asking it. The minutes are up on the website, and I'm involved with the executive committee, and I see it as a good opportunity to be a little more formal in the process, to have a formalized document that we can use, a physical copy for the record. And for me, I would be able to hand that to stakeholders. For example, Portland Commission on Disability. They don't have the ability to come to the meetings. They don't have an idea of what subcommittees are working on. So instead of providing them with a large copy of the minutes, I would rather provide them with something, a bulleted list, and hand that out monthly to stakeholders so that they can just have a short informational pamphlet or something that they can see what we're working on. Does that help a little bit at all? And it helps develop trust.
It sounds like part of the question has to do with how the collection of the information is structured, who's responsible for what parts. Can you talk about that, Bud? I mean, it sounds like we have minutes, we have subcommittee reports, and then we have this, and people are asking how that all fits together and the differences in the purposes of those things.
Okay, so yeah, of course, the minutes are, relating to public meetings law, and certainly they create an ultimate level of transparency for those who are willing to wade through it. What we're trying to do here, though, is actually empower COAB through creating a better linkage to our stakeholders and the public, who ultimately empower us, and also to actually empower the chairs by giving you the opportunity to synthesize all this into just a set of your priorities. What are we working on now? What are we going to be working on next? Very similar to what you just reported just now. And put it in writing, especially for people who can't attend these meetings. And so, going forward, meeting minutes, et cetera, would be a COCL responsibility, and this reporting would be the only thing that you as a chair would be responsible for. Did I answer the question?
Two comments. There's been some mention of minutes being posted. I don't think minutes are being posted for the subcommittees, as far as I know. So I think the record should be clear on that. The COCO has not, for whatever reason, created and posted those minutes. And secondly, is this to be a substitute, this template for reporting at COAB meetings by the subcommittee chairs?
Currently, our bylaws require the subcommittee chairs to do the reporting at this meeting. At least that's my read of it.
Mm-hmm. So this is not intended to be a substitute for that?
That's correct.
All right.
Hopefully it will make it easier.
Bill?
Yeah, one other thing I wanted to add is that I have the minutes and the agenda. I have information from the recommendations. That's been stockpiled since 2015. I have a giant binder. I'm always asking Mandy to get me additional binders for all the information that I have. I have 3 giant binders that I keep all my information in. And I have OCD. I like things to be organized and, with tabs and everything. But I guess the point is, for this document, it's really nice just for me to review how we've evolved over time. I don't need to read the minutes to figure out, how we're doing. That's not a good way to track what progress we've made. But I think that this bullet-pointed list is easy for us to flip back and forth because it's almost a month-to-month informational paper that we can just see. So, it's helpful, I think, to look back chronologically. And also, I think it helps inspire us to think about the work that we've done in the past. So, something else to throw out there.
Alicia?
Yes, I do not disagree with the general spirit of that. I guess I just want to roll back the tape. We just had this discussion, and Bud, you just repeated that very much like the reports we gave tonight, right? So I'm saying, for efficiency's sake, instead of having a report that chairs have to fill out, if you're just asking us to follow that format when we give our monthly reports, there you go. Is what I'm saying. I don't disagree with the general spirit. I'm just saying, why create additional work when we don't have to? So you've presented a decent format. Most of us followed that format already tonight, and if it's already on the record, then it's handled.
Good point.
that was really what I was trying to say. So I wanted to come back and clarify.
Thank you.
Rochelle?
I think in addition to the reports, you're asking subcommittee chairs to attend the executive committee on a rotational basis, and you're asking some of the members of the COAB to have contact monthly with their stakeholder, whoever appointed them. You're asking an awful lot of people who, and I'm sensitive to this word, Siadam, who are already overburdened. We talked about that word the other day. But I think you just need to be a little cautious about what you're asking people to do. I mean, this week alone, you know, I must have spent 30 hours doing COAB stuff. And now you're asking that monthly I have contact with Amanda Fritz, which is fine. I don't know that she needs monthly contact. We have a representative of her office right in the meeting. She comes regularly. I don't know that the city council want us to talk to them monthly.
Right.
I don't think you can make these demands. You can make suggestions, but I think you have to be a little flexible here, please. Thank you.
Good points, Rochelle. Thank you. So maybe the wording there could be changed, because when we asked this question in executive committee, what I was told was that most of our members who were appointed by PCOD, HRC, what have you, are having these informational sessions with their sponsors already, and that this would just be a supplement. But the intention was to have this there as something you can use with your sponsor, but not to dictate that you have a specific relationship with your sponsor. You could just email them this report every month. Or you could sit down and have a meeting. That's for you to figure out and decide what is best. And maybe the wording can be changed to express that better than it is right now.
Tasha?
Rochelle, I hear what you're saying on the time thing. I mean, I think we all put a lot of time into this, and also Dr. Moreland, I hear about the time thing is important. So I think we really do need to look at what do we need to do, what needs to be done, what doesn't need to be done, but what's being accomplished by other tasks. But I also would ask people to look at, and Bud kind of brought it up, there are other ways to communicate back with your stakeholders. But as important it is for us to look at the relationship between the police and the community, it's just as important to look at the relationship between the COAB and the community. Because if the COAB doesn't have the support of the community, that's going to be tough for the police to get the support of the community. So, and that does require communication with the stakeholders. And if you're sitting on this board due to a certain stakeholder, then I think that there should be some effort to communicate with that person. But I do agree, it may not have to be a meeting. It may just be an email or a conversation, but I do support that effort be made, even though I know it will take time.
Ciara?
I supported this effort because I also sit on the Human Rights Commission. We meet monthly. I do what I can to keep up with our executive committee and the notes and readings for our full general COAB meetings, but this would be extremely helpful for me when I go and report monthly to the HRC to be able to say, here's what we're doing right now, without having to go and read every single committee's entire minutes. I think the HRC would appreciate this format. Maybe it's just as easy to do, when it comes time for these committee reports, to just have them be recorded in this manner. And maybe that's a good middle ground. But it's extremely helpful for me as a, rep and liaison back and forth between HRC and COAB to be able to say, here's what we did this month, here's what we're doing next month. That's it.
Hello?
So, correct me if I'm wrong, Bud, but basically this is just a tool that helps us develop relationships with stakeholders and engage with the outside community. I'm a Portland Commission on Disability commissioner, and they give me the floor to present what's going on with COAB, and this is so nice because it's succinct. And when I present, it's an easy document for me. I don't have to read every note that I've ever taken. It's just easy for me to expand, to look down as a platform, as a tool, and then expand from there if needed. But we will go back to executive committee and discuss this now that we have a better pulse. Is that correct, Bud?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and what I'm hearing is not an objection to the intent, but what I'm hearing is a resistance to the imposition of further mandated expenditures of time and energy, and a wish to have us look at what exists to see how it can be used in the same effort. Yes?
Yeah, I guess I wouldn't use the words resistance to the imposition. What I would say is that in general, it's supported, it makes good sense. I think that there are some logistical concerns, and we just want to make sure that we are being most efficient with the time that we spend on the COAB. And if we can accomplish the goal in the context of the meeting, then we should attempt to do that. But there's no disagreement with the general spirit in your recommendation.
I heard that, and the word resistance was not in any way to imply a negative.
Well, it's, it can be interpreted in many ways, and we just want to make sure that...
You did it better than I did,
yeah,
okay.
No, it's not about better. I just wanted to reframe for the audience that it's not, it's just sort of, we're just
done,
giving some
Alicia.
feedback.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Sadat.
All right. Okay, so the next step, Bud.
Well, next step, we're going to take your feedback back to executive committee and figure out what we need to change. I invite any of you, short of a COAB quorum, that would like to attend the next executive committee to do so. And if you do, then we'll certainly engage you in that conversation at that time as well.
Okay. Thank you very much, Bud.
Thank you.
We have about 20 minutes to look at policy recommendations. And I am now looking to find my notes.
I would prefer not to start looking at those.
That was going to be my question, Tom. How did you feel about going at this point?
I'm against it.
Okay. Then I think that's resistance. Okay. What I would like to do then, to take a few minutes here, is I heard something come up in the discussion this evening. Okay, so let me be clear. This will be, the discussion on recommendations is deferred until the next meeting. Okay, as per the request of the chair and the agreement of other COAB members. Okay. Now, in the course of the discussion this evening, I heard something stated that I think is worth consideration, and that is that there is more discussion time needed for COAB. This is something Philip raised, and it's something that has been a concern as the chair. I've been concerned that there doesn't seem to be a lot of dialogue around some of the issues that are presented or some of the recommendations. It doesn't seem to be a full discussion sometimes. And I wondered how other COAB members are feeling about that, or if they had ideas on ways to improve our discussions. Anything you want to say at all? Okay, Philip.
Thank you, Kathleen, for recognizing my concern. I do appreciate that. It does mean a lot to me. So ideas and suggestions on how to address that issue as far as having time for discussion. I don't want to, I mean, maybe, I don't want to say maybe having a third meeting. No, we're done, we're tired, it's exhausting, I get it. So I'm not suggesting that. That's the last resort, is if we had, but I'm trying to avoid that. So I'm thinking maybe at each meeting, if we could have maybe 20 minutes set aside for deliberation, for discussion during the meetings. Maybe not 20, maybe 30 minutes, maybe 40 minutes. I don't know, but something to set time aside so we can start discussing. And I think it's important that we really get into these issues in the subcommittee meetings when we're all together there in the subcommittee, and we can bring that then here to the larger COAB. But here we don't have the time for it. And people are watching and thinking, I don't know where these ideas are come from. We need the time to discuss it here in the full COAB in front of the community so they can see the process and really share our concerns and our thoughts and what we're trying to address in every topic that we do address here. So that's one, maybe if we had every meeting, we had 20 minutes set aside for discussion. That's okay. That's my thought. Now you guys.
Tasha, and then Seattle.
I agree with Philip. I think that there needs to be some sort of time for discussion. It seems like we come into these meetings and people from different committees have had these discussions in their own subcommittees, yet other people sitting on the COAB haven't had the benefit of those, and they're voting on recommendations. And sometimes I think people are voting on a recommendation they don't even actually truly understand because we have not had the time to have the discussion at this table. And if everybody at this table is going to vote, that vote should be an educated vote, and they should have everything clear in their mind about what it is that they're voting on. So I do think that it's important to have those conversations, and I don't have an answer as to how to make that happen. I too say not a third meeting a month, 2 is plenty. I think sometimes this would be my opinion. I think we're just going to have to say we are going to be slow and deliberate and give a good product. And if that meets people's timelines, then it does. And if we have to say it's going to take us a little longer, we say it's going to take us a little longer. That would just be, yeah, I agree.
I have Seattle, Laquita, and Sharon.
I agree, and I think one way that we heard, a different way that we might have heard that tonight was in the mental health subcommittee discussion and report about, I think Dr. Moreland Kapuya mentioned, did I do that right?
Yeah, you did.
Oh, yes. Wanting to review some of the policies that other committees are considering with a particular mental health lens to them. And so I think a broader discussion might make those recommendations much stronger and robust as we move forward.
Thank you. Laquita.
Good evening, everyone. I just wanted to also, I agree and I support what Philip said and everyone up until this point. And I think maybe there's a little bit more time in that to have a discussion, possibly like in a breakout group where we can sit somewhere and discuss what's going on with other subcommittees and how we can more support those recommendations, because like Lieutenant Tasha said about the educated vote on that is very important. I know I've had some concerns with my votes in the past because I was not completely up to date and sped with what was going on with that recommendation being asked or that vote. So I support that we possibly at maybe the business meeting, maybe we have, I don't know if there's rooms where even the community is welcome to come and sit in on those spaces with us as we get that for about 30 minutes or 40 minutes, extending that. So thanks.
Sharon.
So I also support what Philip said and everyone has said up to this point.
I think maybe we should put, like, it's so nice right now even being able to have this discussion and not feeling that sense of like, oh my gosh, time is running out. And so maybe just planning that whatever we think it's going to take the 3 hours, just plan that it just take away or add on an extra half hour or something. Just have that cushion built in, and then I think, I mean, things might be a little bit slower in the process, but I think actually it will end up being a much more robust process, and that we would accomplish a lot more, and it would be more meaningful, and there would be a lot more value to it if we are able to take that time.
Anyone else? Yes, but.
So what I'm about to say is more in form of a question, maybe a little bit of brainstorming. I'm just going to throw it out there and see what you think. It's probably a little bit off the wall. One of the things that we heard at the retreat was that the way that public officials who are constrained by these horrible rules on quorum and public meetings, how they do their work has to do with enlisting the help of others who are not public officials to do research, to do canvassing, to do polling. So I find myself wondering, is there some way to apply that here? Are we doing everything ourselves within the subcommittees, whereas in actuality we should maybe consider somehow farming it out to others who are not constrained in the way that we are, they can sit in a room and talk openly without having to take notes and then just report back to us. So I've thrown it out there. I'm done.
As the chair, I need to remind you that there is a reason for public meeting law, and it is the same accountability that we must give, that we expect from those with whom we're working. And so I encourage you to look for ways that do not appear to be trying to circumvent that law. More comments?
So
Okay.
maybe we could make a recommendation out of that to add 30 minutes out of the 3 hours, or well, hold on. Okay, let me back up. I make a recommendation that we add 30 minutes to our time.
No, that was no.
What I would prefer, if I may, is for us to go back to the executive committee, have a discussion on this that is more in-depth, and it looks more at the kinds of agendas we've been setting and how we've been doing it. And then come back to the COAB with some information and some suggestions. How's that?
So basically you're saying that we essentially agree that we need to have time for more of that discussion. But the executive committee can figure out a way, we can set that up, move things around to get that figured out. Is that essentially the point?
Yes, Philip, and we're going to count on you to do the basic work.
Beautiful. I'm ready.
Well, I think it was an important thing for you to raise, and I appreciate that it got raised and that you were willing to discuss it, and that we now have some sense of agreement that this will not only give us a more in-depth discussion, but will improve the output. The quality of the work being done will be improved by having a deeper and more meaningful discussion on some of the issues upon which we're voting, which you're voting.
Well, and another thing that I've noticed about this room tonight, I mean, the energy, it feels right. I can see the people, the community members. At PCC, it is too formal. It's too cold. It feels cold. We're all in a row. I can't see. But here, people are looking at each other, and I noticed the interpreters tonight are even signing better. There is something about this room that, I mean, in getting the time to discuss, that would be awesome. I just think more people would come and get involved. And I think I've said enough. You all get my point.
Thank you, Philip. And I think we've agreed that we like this space a lot. How do you feel about it? Yeah, I think it's more, yeah. How about the food? Yeah, I was going to ask about the food. Bud likes the food. How about the rest of you?
And then how about the community? Yeah?
Do you like the food?
What?
You want the shrimp, yeah. That's high-end stuff there, Mary Claire.
That'll be a great problem to deal with, actually.
Just remembering that we also, a part of the decisions on where we meet and the kind of food that you get has to do with our budget. Just remember that, okay? So I'm going to do something I think extraordinary.
Do it. Yes, do it.
Can you handle it? Let me hear a motion for adjournment.
So moved. Yes.
This meeting is adjourned.
I have an announcement now that